A while back, I was in Sweden at the Karolinska Institute, and I was with my co-author, Leonard Malodno. Leonard is also co-author of two of Stephen Hawking's books, A Briefer History of Time and The Grand Design. Leonard and I met at a debate in Caltech where he asked me what the definition of consciousness was. And I said it's the superposition of infinite possibilities. And that comment got a lot of ridicule in the media, with many people commenting that Leonard Malodno had owned Deepak Chopra. At least that was the perception. I still maintain, though, that consciousness is a field of infinite possibilities, and it is the superposition of infinite possibilities, and that they all coexist simultaneously until they differentiate into experience. That's what consciousness is. It differentiates into experience. Now, the way entanglement and singularities are described in physics is, of course, purely in material terms. So right now, if you look up the definition of a black hole or a singularity, it is described as the curvature of space-time that is infinite. The space-time curves upon itself in a location that has zero volume and infinite density. First of all, it's very difficult to conceptualize the curvature of space-time. In Einstein's general theory of relativity, what he's talking about is space-time as a unit, four-dimensional. So there's length, there's breadth, there's height, and there is time. And all of this is one unit, and this curves to the point of zero volume and infinite density, which is a singularity, a black hole. Now, around the black hole, of course, there's something called an event horizon, and it is the distance of the event horizon depends on the density of the black hole. Everybody thought that light could not escape from a black hole, but now it is believed that it does. So what exactly is the argument between the proponents of realism and the proponents of the case against reality? So a while ago, I was also at a conference of physicists and mathematicians, and they were all discussing the nature of the universe. And there was one mathematician, actually he was from MIT, forget his name right now, but he said there's no such thing as a universe. It's a human construct. And of course, many ancient wisdom traditions have said that the universe is but one long dream in an infinite awareness. How do we reconcile the materialistic worldview with the consciousness worldview? I think the materialistic worldview takes the experience of human perception, human cognition as fundamental truth in describing a reality that is independent of human experience. How can this be so? If you observe something, then there has to be an entity that is doing the observing. What is doing the observing and what is interpreting the observation? And for lack of a better word, we can say consciousness or awareness is where observations occur, where observations are known, and where observations are interpreted, and actually the observations themselves are modifications of consciousness as sensory experience. So ultimately, there is sensory experience and the interpretation of the sensory experience, which is then projected as the idea of a real universe. But we also know that the range of human experience in terms of perception is very limited. It's called the Umwelt. It's a narrow band of perceptual activity. Of course, we can extend it through telescopes, microscopes, etc., but it still is a perceptual activity. And we can also say that no perceptual activity can experience wholeness. How can we experience wholeness with bits of sensory perception? With bits of sensory perception, we cannot experience the whole, and yet we interpret our experience of the universe as whole. Interesting conundrum. So if you think hard about this, you really think hard about this, is it possible to have an observer-independent universe? And if so, what it would look like? As you can see, the question is meaningless. If there is an observer-independent universe, then what does it look like? Looking implies some entity that is looking. Okay, so even when I look at my body or look at my eyes in a mirror, something is doing the looking and then interpreting the looking as reality. But we can see that this is a convenient fiction, really, because there cannot be anything called the picture of the universe without the look of it. So this leads us into deep waters, in that reality is not only stranger than we think, reality is stranger than we can think. We can only interpret our perceptual experiences. And we know for certain that our perceptual experiences are inaccurate, that they do not describe reality. They are also convenient fictions for another convenient fiction, which is the human body as it appears to you right now. This is a perception. It's a modified perception of yours. What you're looking at right now as Deepak is a modified perception that is happening in your awareness. And this is what it looks like. And you say, that's Deepak. But we know that even this entity, Deepak, is proportionately as void as intergalactic space. So how does something that is proportionately as void as intergalactic space appear as all this, including this and all this? This is possible only if that nothing modifies itself as everything. Nothing modifies itself as everything. The universe ultimately is a free lunch, and it is made of nothing, and yet it appears as everything that we can see. And, we now say there are 2 trillion galaxies, 700 sextillion stars, uncountable trillions of probably habitable planets. And all this is the interpretation of sensations as experienced through the instrument that we call the human brain, which is also a modified perception of the same nothingness. So these conundrums have actually occupied the attention of many philosophers, many scientists throughout millennia. But human species have only existed, the human species has only existed for 200,000 years. Written language is, maybe 6,000 years old. Oral language, 15 to 30,000 years old. And then, of course, we now have mathematics and all kinds of vocabularies for other disciplines of science, biology and astronomy and physics and chemistry and quantum mechanics. But it is very obvious, I think, that all these concepts are also experiences in awareness. No concept can be had in the absence of awareness or consciousness. So not only does consciousness modify itself into species-specific experiences, but then human consciousness takes its own experience of perceptual reality. And I wouldn't even say human consciousness, the human mind takes its own experience of perceptual reality, which is basically only sensations, the sensation of sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell, and then interprets them as this magnificent universe, and it comes up with all kinds of theories, including gravity, the grand, general theory of relativity, which describes the curvature of four-dimensional space-time, the special theory of relativity, which describes the constancy of the speed of light and the equivalence of mass and energy. And even the equations are conceived in human consciousness. There can be no experience of an equation, a concept, an idea, a feeling, or a perception without consciousness. So even though naive realism, the idea that the universe exists independent of us, you and me, is an attractive idea for doing science and creating technology, it still it is not describing reality. There is no way to describe reality, because reality's ultimate reality is inconceivable and also imperceivable. And that ultimate reality is you and me, and who we are is nothing perceivable or conceivable, and yet without us there would be nothing to conceive or perceive. So my friends, when you really think about this, and you think about the ontological and epistemological constraints we have due to our faulty perceptual instruments, then you do realize that the mystery of existence is unsolvable. And therefore, many have said, surrender to mystery is the only solution to the mystery. And when you surrender to mystery, you realize you are the mystery. And this mystery is divine. So ultimately, when you surrender to mystery, you're surrendering to your own divine self. In this, there is joy. In this, there is humility. In this, there is innocence. And in this, there is comfort. And in this, there is gratitude for existence. Because existence is a mystery, but the awareness of existence is even a bigger mystery, because without the awareness of existence, there would be no experience of existence. And if there's no experience of existence, then there is no existence. Non-existence is not an experience. Therefore, there is only existence. Think about this, and is it even useful? I think it is, because all our conundrums, all our fears about mortality, about old age, about infirmity are ultimately based on false identity. And when we shift the identity from the projection to the source of the projection, from the experience to the source of all experiences, then we discover we are divine beings creating perceptual tricks that create the appearance of a universe, but it's all a dream, cosmic dream in the mind of the infinite. We are God's dream. We are God's dream. And not only are we God's dream, we are the divine itself dreaming. This is what it means to wake up. I've said this many times before, a quote from Wittgenstein: our life is a dream, we are asleep, but once in a while, we wake up enough to know that we're dreaming. Same thing what the Buddha said, this lifetime of ours is transient as autumn clouds. To watch the birth and death of beings is like looking at the movements of a dance. A lifetime is like a flash of lightning in the sky, rushing by like a torrent down a steep mountain. And a dream can last a few seconds or eons or epochs, but in the dream, time is muddled and we go beyond the dream into deep sleep. Time doesn't exist. That deep sleep is our window to ultimate reality. I know many times these ideas seem abstract and useless, but all our problems, all our conundrums, all our suffering comes from being attached to a dream. This sounds kind of almost nihilistic, but that nihilism is what spiritual traditions call the dark night of the soul, when there is fear of losing identity and not recognizing that all identities are provisional except the absolute identity, which is the divinity that we all are. That's the only true identity. Thank you for indulging me, and hope this was slightly useful.